Okay, so this is day. Actually, this should be day 6. I'll need to adjust that. Anyhow, week 2. I've been working pretty consistently on a music project now. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and turn that down. So it's actually the VR project. I think I've mentioned this a couple different times, but one of the things that keeps on coming to mind in this and that I've really been struggling through is the whole problem of trying to work through creative blocks. It's not, I think I used to have a misconception around this. When I was younger, I thought of it as something that you experience when you're trying to do like creative writing, or maybe you're trying to write a song, or it's like more in those artsy types of things, but it's also something that I experienced all the time in software development and design. And it's basically any situation where you're trying to do some sort of creative problem solving, which I think, sort of correlating these experiences together now, I would sort of classify trying to debug or figure out how to build a program of some sort or an app that you're working on, or trying to wrestle with some sort of design problem, or building like a model or like some sort of system architecture, anything like that. I am convinced that it involves a lot of sort of creative thinking and taking a problem or some sort of goal and looking at it from a bunch of different angles, and trying to approach it from those different angles and see what actually works, what allows you to kind of get to the root of the problem and figure out some sort of solution for it. And when I reflect on it that way, it sounds very engineering speak, but the same thing happens to me all the time trying to do something like composing music for this VR story that we're trying to tell, or creative writing. I was putting together a sort of like prose short story to kind of exemplify what we were going for to the rest of the team before we really got started with development, and really try to capture the sort of idea, the concept at the root early on. And repeatedly throughout that process, there are periods when it feels like pulling teeth. It literally feels like I am slogging through inch by inch, and sometimes just sitting there skidding around in the mud and throwing spaghetti at the wall and trying everything, and nothing's working. Nothing is like getting me to that next phase where I feel good about the thing that I am creating, the fruits of all of this labor and energy that is being put into the problem. So the past week or so, I've been really stuck on a particular part of this story that we're building. And it is around the sort of theme of the main character that you encounter. It was the right word for it, I guess. It was misleading early on when I started to tackle the music for this project, because I found I was able to really relatively easily compose and piece together music for all of the parts of the story around actually meeting and encountering this main character, the focal point of the story. So everything around them was pretty straightforward. I need to capture some sort of emotional like feel and ambiance of being of sort of slogging your way through a storm, and what that feels like. It's like pretty straightforward to do that, at least for me. I know what that is like. I know what that sounds like too. And then maybe you want to capture the sensation of like flying or like success, and sort of rising up after this trying period, and you're kind of feeling that elation. Capturing that in music is relatively straightforward as well, at least in this situation. Even the feeling of kind of just floating along in clouds, that was another thing I was trying to capture. But when it actually came to sitting down and just writing the damn theme, capturing the sort of voice, the real sort of soul of this character and the impact that we wanted them to have on you as a player, that has been the hardest part of the whole thing. And I've been procrastinating on it for weeks by writing all the other stuff around it. And I was slowly kind of realizing this as I'm sort of getting the idea here that I am really just literally beating around the bush to do everything but put together this central character's theme in the story. I turned and started trying to face that over the past week and a half, and it has been really frustrating. It may not necessarily be obvious to anyone around me at all points in time, but when I'm sitting here trying to crank away at this particular problem, I know it's kind of the crux of the story right now, and it is the core of the problem, the things we're trying to capture. And churning away on that, the only way that I've actually been able to start making progress on that is just repeatedly slamming my face into it over and over again. At least that's what it feels like. An analogy came to mind earlier as I was like finally starting to make some progress on this. It feels kind of like you're in this giant open field that is covered with feet of snow. So you can't actually see the path forward. You can't tell exactly where you're supposed to go. You know that there's a path there somewhere. Maybe you've been here before. So you know that there is a way through this space, but it is completely covered over, so you don't know exactly how to capture it. And so what you end up kind of having to do in this sort of creative block is just start shoveling everywhere. Poking at the ground underneath, trying to dig up wherever you can, throwing different things at the wall, and eventually something started to stick. I reached out to one of my teammates on this, and they gave me some feedback on it. So I did a few more iterations, some more feedback, and then finally I just stepped in there with them real time on a call, and I was like, okay, look, I think I may have what I'm looking for here. And so I started playing with it with them, and like finally got that satisfying feedback, just the expression on their face. They're like, yes, that's the thing. In this situation also just so happened to be something that has been it's like a very dear sort of idea or progression to me in general for a very long time. So I think I finally just got to the point where I was no longer overthinking it. I wasn't trying so hard to capture some magical thing over there. I was really just pouring myself into it because I'd ran out of other ideas. And that's when I finally actually hit on the thing that was working, the thing that we needed in the first place. Oh, so yeah, that's been the struggle over this past week on the side, working on this project. Okay, so just reading your comment here, Safeway Pat. When you break through and find that theme, do you feel the need to go back and work it into your previous works? Or do you like to keep it defined and separated? Funnily enough, this particular one, it is a sort of chord progression, and the melodic lines that I'm kind of playing with in it, those are a little bit more varied. So I'm still sort of homing that in, but the overall progression of it is a modulated version of one that I have repeatedly come back to over the course of my life, regarding music at least. Whether that's listening to songs and things that really fall into that same shape, or at least the sort of emotional feel that it's capturing seems to be a theme. Seems that particular progression kind of speaks to people in this particular sort of emotional experience. And it happened to be what we were looking for here, but I just couldn't see it because I was trying everything else possible. So in a way, it is something that I have used many times, or at least gravitated back towards many times before. That's the weird thing about music. I don't know, storytelling in general, is that sometimes there is just a sort of formula there that's underlying everything that you can't help but sort of uncover by accident. When you're trying to just be extremely novel and come up with something that's super interesting for its own sake, sometimes that's just trying too hard. And the thing you need is the thing that you already knew. So I'm going to keep this a short session tonight, at 10 minutes now. But yeah, I'll definitely jump back on tomorrow and see where I'm at with this, and also other progress and mentions from last week. But yeah, thanks for stopping by.